Going live in 1 minute.
Hello everyone. A big warm welcome to all of you runner and non-runner friends from all over. We hope you're snuggled up in the safety of your houses this weekend and watching this on your laptops, phones, etc. My name is Draftee Physicals from Hyderabad Runners, and I'm going to start off by asking you all a question. 24th August 2014. Does anyone remember what this day was? Type it out in the comments in this particular video if your memory triggers it out. 24th August 2014. So while you just think about it and type that over there, let me tell you an interesting thought that my mom tells me always. She says there's something called Dvitiya Vignam. Yes, you start something off, Dvitiya is second. And she says you start something off, and the first day you do it is very critical. Also, very, very important is that you continue doing it the second day without actually having a roadblock onto it. So for us at Train and Shine, the second webinar is of such immense importance too, because it talks about the flow after the first webinar. And we really thank you for joining us today and to be able to make the second webinar a success. So YouTube Studio, video watching trends, tweets, and almost every media and social media site is abuzz with the keyword COVID-19. So it's very natural that we bring you a webinar with this word in it. Run less, run faster. Train smart, run forever. Who better than the orator of these fine words, which almost work like a mantra? Who better than the orator of these fine words and the creator of the world's most sought after marathon training plan to talk to us about how to evolve in our exercise training plans post COVID-19? Today, we have with us Professor Emeritus Bill Pierce, co founder of FIRST, the Furman Institute of Running and Scientific Training. He's popularly known as the Marathon Man, who will be speaking on the topic exercise evolution, past, present, and post COVID. So let's see. Did anyone talk about it? So Vaishali says kickoff of Airtel Hyderabad Marathon. We are 10 years into this, Vaishali, but thanks so much for responding to that. So this is what 24th August 2014 was. It was the fourth edition, not the kickoff, but the fourth edition of the Airtel Hyderabad Marathon. But much more important for us today, it is also the day that Hyderabad Runners and Bill Pierce started our collaboration together when he became our brand ambassador for AHM held on 23rd and 24th August that year. From then to now, we're so glad to continue this collaborative relationship with you, Bill, and we look forward to hearing from you today. A quick note about Hyderabad Runners. As many of you know, we're the creator and organizer of the Hyderabad Marathon, the city's only full marathon event organized for the runners, by the runners. In our endeavor to promote running, fitness, and active lifestyles, we've designed this exciting webinar series that will focus on discussions and conversations with global experts on a wide range of fitness topics in these testing times. A couple of housekeeping points before we get started. Please remember, everyone's using the internet and we're all managing it from home. So request some patience and support just in case you face any buffering or lag. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Facebook live chat. We will bring up some of them into the Q&A session at the end of this presentation, and it will answer the rest online too post the session. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Rajesh Vecha, the founder president of Hyderabad Runners, to add his inputs and introduce our guest of honor for today, Bill Pierce. Over to you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Draftee. A brief bio of Dr. Bill Pierce. Dr. Bill Pierce is the lead author of Runner's World, Run Less, Run Faster, and Runner's World's Train Smart, Run Forever. He's co-founder of the Furman Institute of Running and Scientific Training, popularly known as FIRST. FIRST promotes running as a healthy physical activity by providing training based on scientific principles and research. Dr. Pierce, listed as one of the 10 marathon super coaches by Runner's World magazine, has made hundreds of presentations on fitness, wellness, and running. He and FIRST have been featured in all the popular newspapers such as Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Business Week, Men's Journal, Runner's World, and many other newspapers in USA and abroad. Dr. Pierce graduated from Davidson College with a bachelor's degree in political science in 1971. He earned a master's degree in sports studies from West Virginia University and a doctorate in health and physical education from Virginia Tech. From there, Dr. Pierce joined the Furman University faculty in 1983 and chaired the department for 32 years. During his tenure as chair, the health sciences major grew into the most popular on campus. In addition to this administrative role at the university, he has held many leadership positions, including chair of the university faculty. Dr. Pierce was an all-round performer in his high school track team, competing jumps, sprint, relays, and middle distances. He has captured many age group awards in his 250 road races, including 42 marathons. Dr. Pierce, currently 70, ran his first marathon in 1977. And is one of the few to have run the Boston Marathon in 5 different decades, 1970s, 1980s, 90s, 2000, and 2010. And I'm sure he'll be doing it during this decade also. Yes, apart from this, he has run marathons all across the world, and his best time of 2:44 was run at the age of 41 years. In addition to his years at Furman University, his past professional experiences include teaching positions at Bluefield College and Clinch Valley of the University of Virginia and Idaho State University. His wife, Marianne, also recently retired her position as the Senior Associate Academic Dean and Professor of Business Administration at Furman University. Bill, though retired, is very active, and he has been still active, advising all people in the area of marathon running. Bill, we once again like to thank you for having agreed to come on and be as part of the Beyond the Track series. Over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Rajesh. I appreciate that. Certainly, for me, having the opportunity to once again join with the Hyderabad runners. As was mentioned, I was here in 2014 and had the opportunity to run your half marathon, your very flat half marathon. As the temperature reached 32 degrees centigrade, I about melted on that last flyover. So let me add my screen and the slideshow. And I look forward today to sharing with you and look forward to questions afterwards, but to talk a little bit about exercise and the role it's played in our society, and particularly what's happened in the last half century. Throughout history, primarily, we found that exercise, physical activity was seen as recreation and not really as something that you did for health. However, something happened in the United States during World War II, after the United States was attacked at Pearl Harbor. There was a rush to bring young men in and give them a physical and to boost our combat troops. But startling information came out that about half of the draftees were found unfit for combat. And this created a real concern. General Eisenhower, who then became President Eisenhower in the 1950s, conducted test on American children and found that they were less physically fit than European children. As a result, he began the President's Council on Youth Fitness. And this was really the first step in gaining the nation's attention about fitness levels. After succeeding President Eisenhower was President Kennedy. President Kennedy was very young, was one of the youngest presidents ever, and he was very active. And he wrote an article for Sports Illustrated called The Soft American. And he said, we are under-exercised as a nation. We look instead of play. We ride instead of walk. And said physical fitness is the basis for all other forms of exercise. Well, later in the 1960s, an Air Force physician, Dr. Ken Cooper, wrote a book called Aerobics. No one knew the term aerobics at that time. And people were looking it up in the dictionary and finding that it meant with oxygen and things. What's this book about? But largely what Dr. Cooper said was that if you gained fitness, you would have better health and you would live longer and you would avoid heart problems. How he developed his program was very interesting. He did all kinds of lab tests on the soldiers to determine the exertion level, the oxygen cost of different activities, whether it's playing tennis, playing racquetball, running, bicycling. And so then he developed points. And he said, you got so many points. If you played an hour of singles tennis, you got 4 points. If you played racquetball, you got 2 points. If you rode your bike 20 miles, you got 5 points. And if you added up over the week and you got 30 points, then you were going to be protected from heart disease. It wasn't totally true, but the idea resonated with the American public. Really, exercise and the idea of fitness was pretty much born out of the book Aerobics. And it shifted the idea that exercise was now not just recreation, but it was prevention. It could help to prevent these various diseases. That followed with the idea of in the Olympics in Munich in 1972, Frank Shorter won the gold medal in the Olympic marathon. That marathon was widely seen by many Americans on ABC television, and people were fascinated, including myself. Someone can really run 26 miles? And Americans took to the road, started doing 1 mile or 2 miles, and thinking, how in the world can someone run 26 miles? Bill Bowerman, the popular track coach at University of Oregon, one of the best track programs in the country, had visited New Zealand, and he found that New Zealanders were out running, but they were running very slowly. As a track coach, he was used to people running at very high intensity. And so he was fascinated by this idea that people, not just high school and college, but older individuals were out exercising. He brought that concept back to the United States. He wrote a little book called Jogging. No one knew what that term was either. And so all of this added up. And then later, Jim Fixx published the best-selling book, The Complete Book of Running. And he described how his own health had changed. He had been a lifelong smoker, eater of deep dish pizza and barbecue. And he said that he had changed his life through running, That book became very popular. So by the end of the 1970s, there were road races in America and people were participating. I know that for me, I ran my first road race in 1976, and it was a 10K. I thought I'd accomplished something that few mortals had ever done. And then we moved into the 1980s, and the whole fitness craze took off. And it's interesting. We've seen this spread around the globe, and with more than just running or more than just tennis. Jane Fonda, a popular actress in America, put out a video, and it seemed that every middle-aged woman bought that video and started exercising in her home. And there were classes in aerobic dance, and now there were weight machines. People were doing resistance training, whereas in the past, barbell clubs were just for very serious macho men who were trying to get really strong. We even had bodybuilding competitions, health clubs. When I was growing up in the 1950s and early 1960s, I'd never seen a fitness club. There were none. And this was all a new phenomena in the 1980s, and people were joining fitness centers, health clubs, and like many things, entrepreneurs realized that there was money to be made selling people exercise. So it became very popular, and the Center for Disease Control, the American Medical Association embraced this idea that now exercise could be valuable to you. And I put in a slide here to show what happened with the global fitness industry. The health market today is worth $94 billion, 210,000 health clubs around the world. The US has the largest market. In Europe is second behind that, with Germany and the UK generating the most revenue. Now, what's interesting is that looking at India's market, and it's estimated to be worth $2.6 billion with 24,000 clubs, and that's all happened virtually in the last 10 years. 16% annual growth, and it's estimated by 2023 it'll have a health club market the size of Germany or England and Britain. So it's remarkable how this is spread around the globe. The popularity of running, you can see how it developed in the United States. In 1976, there were 25,000 people finishing marathons, and that grew by 1980 to 143,000. Then in 1990, you can see 224,000, and it peaked in 2014 at a little over 500,000 finishers of marathons. Now, recently, we've seen that the popularity of 5Ks and half marathons has outgrown marathons in the United States, and those have become the most popular. In 1980, women comprised 10% of marathon runners in the United States. Now, more women participate in road races than men, both in 5Ks and in half marathons. So we've seen a real change in who's participating. Older runners are participating. Women out in the roads in greater numbers than the men. Some question, is the running boom in the USA over? Because the numbers have started to drop a little bit. And I think largely because, one, is that there are many other options. People are doing indoor cycling. Some older runners decided that riding the bike is a little easier on their joints. Peloton has become very popular. Also, multi-sports, duathlons, triathlons, many have grown into that, or the whole idea of the CrossFit Spartan races have attracted many individuals. The other aspect of it is the entry fees, because the demand was so great, really grew. And when the New York Marathon started in 1972, the entry fee was $2. And now it's, I think, $350. So some people who like to race often have found that it's become expensive. The Running Times magazine ceased publication. Runner's World has now gone bi-monthly, only 6 issues a year instead of 12. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen and how exercise and physical activity might spread to other activities besides just running. Worldwide, participation has declined by 13% since 2016, but the growth continues in Asia. If we were to characterize marathoning, we would say it's now open to many more people, not just the very competitive runners, because you can see the average finish time has slowed for males by over 40 minutes. And the runners are getting older. Much of that is because of the large baby boomer population in the United States. And as I mentioned, for the first time, there are more female than male runners. The focus has been more on health, social focus. Many like to belong to a running club and run together, and less on just achievement. I wanted to mention a couple of other countries. Running boom in Japan started around 2003. And after the Tokyo Marathon in 2007, then it grew very rapidly. And many people started running outside, something that before the year 2000 wasn't very common in Japan. The health boom prompted more people to take up running as more people started gaining weight. And we know that technology, Western diets have all contributed to an increase in weight gain around the world. And media coverage showing famous actresses and models running helped to get rid of running's negative image and make it cool. I've read that the same thing has happened in India with some of the popular Bollywood actors now looking pretty buff and exercising themselves. Running in China, of course, where we have billions of people living, has really surged since around 2011, and 1.3 million runners has grown, doubled in less than 2 years. We've seen a rising middle class there with more disposable incomes. So we've seen more people participating in activity. These cultural and economic shifts have led middle class urbanites to run in China, but it still hasn't spread to the countryside and the peasants. Estimated now that there's 200 million runners, and I can tell you that there are many, many companies clamoring to get into China to tap into that market with running shoes, paraphernalia, sponsoring races. And then, of course, there's the running boom in India, which is absolutely remarkable. And because of my relationship with Rajesh, Shiv, and following what's happened in India whether it's in Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, it is absolutely amazing the growth and the sophistication of the exercise programs and also the race organization. I was really amazed with the elaborate organization of the Hyderabad Marathon and half marathon when I was there to visit. It was They're just wonderful events and all the activities leading up to it. It's no surprise that it has been so successful. So while global growth may have stalled, certainly the running events in Asia and especially in India continue to increase in size. And India has enjoyed the biggest increases of any country in marathon running over the past 10 years. However, we haven't seen the growth of female runners in India yet that matches what has happened in the United States. I'm absolutely convinced that will happen. Women don't want to be left behind. So fitness is very much tied to economic prosperity. The concept of the modern gym is largely the product of post-war American prosperity. People had disposable incomes. They could now participate in exercise and were willing to spend some of their money on having a personal trainer or belonging to a club. And this movement in the US gym culture has moved into India, and the so-called modern gym has really grown. Economic reforms that began in the 1990s in India led to the country's GDP more than quadrupling by the mid-2000s, created a much bigger middle class. And of course, the IT sector has been the linchpin of that skills-based economy and a vehicle for educated young Indians to enter the middle class. And with those opportunities, then they have the disposable income to participate in physical activity and exercise. So growing middle class is fueling the growth of the fitness sector. And it's because of the types of jobs that now, especially the IT sector, has provided, people aren't doing manual labor. And so they're trying to compensate for that with increased planned physical activity. I grew up in southern West Virginia around coal miners, and certainly after spending 8 hours down under the ground digging coal for 8 hours, they didn't come out and want to exercise. And so we're seeing still a big separation in our society. So while we talk about all this growth with exercise and participating in physical activity, at the same time, we see at the other end of the spectrum, many people not doing anything. So we've become sort of bipolar with large numbers of people at one end of the socioeconomic spectrum participating in marathons and triathlons, and at the other end of the spectrum, we see people who aren't exercising at all and are still suffering from lifestyle-related diseases. In 2007, the American College of Sports Medicine launched a global initiative to mobilize physicians, healthcare professionals, and educators to promote exercise in their practice to prevent, reduce, manage, or treat diseases that impact health and the quality of life in humans. Why did this happen? The reason that it happened is even though people were exercising in America, large sectors of the society were not. And I personally have been involved in community health initiatives for the last 30 years. And while we know the benefits of physical activity, what has happened is obesity has grown without interruption for the last 40 years in America. So why is that? Well, it's only recently in the course of history, really, that physical activity has been promoted for health and not just as recreation. Physicians have actually begun to prescribe exercises. Health insurance companies, in order to reduce their cost, their insurance cost, are now reducing premiums for someone who exercises. You provide documentation that you are exercising, and you will not be as charged as much for your insurance as someone else. Also, some of the insurance companies are offering cash payments. I talked to my brother just yesterday, and he told me he just received payment of $150 from his insurance company because he sent in his exercise log for the past month. Corporations are building elaborate facilities for their employees to exercise because corporations are finding that their medical costs are soaring. And so even in this time of exercise being popular, we're still seeing large disparities among socioeconomic levels in regard to exercise involvement and in diseases. Technology has reduced the need for daily physical activity. Everything can be done remotely. In fact, right now, we are having to do everything remotely. But I call it a paradox because in the US, there's widespread awareness of the importance of regular exercise. There's no way not to know. It's in newspapers, it's in magazines, it's on television. Everyone knows about the importance of regular exercise. But despite that, the general population has never been so physically sedentary and out of shape. I know it's a mixed message. 13% of Americans were obese in 1970. In 2019, 40% are now classified as obese. It's an epidemic. It's an epidemic in our country. And unfortunately, we are sharing our lifestyle with the rest of the world. In the 1970s, India was very concerned about malnutrition. And now 3 decades into the economic boom, I read that large sectors of the population have gotten fat. And so male obesity in India has increased 2,500% since 1975. And the same problem is occurring for women. Food has become plentiful. Food worldwide, or certainly in developed countries, is cheap. And the food, especially high calorie food. India Heart and Stroke Association reports a quarter of all male heart attack patients are under 40. How is this happening? But this happens. Diabetes is becoming more prevalent. It's certainly a big problem in the United States. So when we start talking about exercise, we've run into major changes. I can no longer go to the fitness center myself. I miss that terribly. And so with lockdown, stay-at-home rules, what do you do? Well, some people have home fitness equipment. There's been an enormous increase in sales of stationary bicycles, ellipticals, treadmills in the United States. There's exercise videos. You can find many on YouTube. In neighborhoods where you can get out and walk or jog, people are doing that. Now, in some of the towns and cities, they've had to close the trails because too many people were commingling and doing walking and jogging. So now we have very strict rules about staying 15 feet apart if you're walking or jogging. Online digital workouts. There are a lot of these. There been a lot of increase in subscribers who are now working out from home. And of course, Peloton, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's cycling, and you have an instructor that's in New York, and you can join the classes and compete against other people. Their stock has gone up 50% since the beginning of COVID-19. The future for running and road races. What do we do? Well, if it's possible to get out, basically you're being encouraged to train alone or with a partner, but maintaining your physical distance. Running in large groups is probably not something we're going to be able to do for quite some time. Treadmill training when gyms reopen is possible, and again, they have to be separated. Road races have been largely all canceled, including Berlin in late September. So some people were hoping that, and of course Boston was moved until September. Will it be held? London was moved to September. Will it be held? And will future races maybe just have smaller numbers starting in waves? I think it may be possible, but instead of 10,000 runners, maybe we have a few hundred runners doing a 5K, and we start maybe 10 minutes apart. We're going to have to be creative, I think, certainly in order to be able to have races during COVID-19 or even afterwards. We may not have races until after there is a vaccine. There's a lot of speculation about that. So obviously, we should avoid exercising in crowded places, whether it's indoors or outdoors. We have to avoid running with groups. And I say avoid exercising to fatigue or exhaustion. And the reason for that is we know that one of the things that makes someone vulnerable to COVID-19 is having a weakened immune system, or certainly getting COVID-19 with a weakened immune system makes it much worse. So yes, we want to exercise, but we also know exercising, just like all the studies that show that immediately after a marathon for a couple of weeks, your immune system is suppressed, and you're much more likely to catch a cold or a virus. So we want to be moderate with our exercise. We want to continue mild to moderate exercise. You're going to be able to maintain your fitness. And when this is over, you'll be able to ramp up that fitness. So don't worry about that. Just have a plan. Aim to maintain strength. I'm doing push-ups and using dumbbells to try to maintain strength at home. Maintain physical distancing. You've got to eat healthy eating, get adequate sleep, staying positive. So all in all, here are the lifestyle tips. And these apply anytime, but especially during COVID-19. You want to eat a healthy, well-balanced diet, get your sleep, exercise every day, but at a moderate intensity. Take deep breaths and stretch often. That's something Indians should know a lot about, since yoga is very much a part of the culture. A little meditation, a little relaxation to try to deal with all this uncertainty. Yeah, and of course, we want to avoid risky behaviors, abusing alcohol, ignoring public health recommendations. Unfortunately, alcohol sales have greatly increased in the United States. Who could be surprised? If possible, go for a walk or run. Set and maintain a routine at home, and focus on the things you can control and be appreciative for what we can do. So if this slide post COVID-19, I really don't have much other than questions. What's it going to be like? Well, I think it's largely dependent on how long it lasts. And if we are locked down for a year, then I think the results might be different than if it's another 2 or 3 months. And will there be a second wave, a third wave? Health officials tell us yes. Politicians, unfortunately, tell us no. And that's where the uncertainty lies, and it's difficult to know what the future will bring. Well, I welcome any questions and look forward to interactions.
Hello, Bill.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Raghu. And I would first like to thank you for taking us back in time and walking us through the history, right? And talking specifically about things that we're really interested in. We're always curious to know how things were there in the past and how it evolved, so we can plan our future as well. And I think that's exactly what you did. Other thing I would really thank you is that you talked with a lot of data points and timelines that really gave us a picture of how things evolved. Right, perfect, I would say. But we have a very curious audience, and we still have questions for you.
Okay.
And, I would like to, start with something that's very personal to you, because we know that you are the founder of Run Less, Run Fast program, and we would like to begin, on that. While you talked about how exercise and this stuff evolved. I also wanted to know how the Run Less, Run Fast program as well evolved, along with how things changed. Because I know you would have given this a concept quite long back. So how did the Run Less, Run Fast program evolve in history?
Yes. In many ways, it evolved out of my own running experiences and observations, and along with my co-author, Scott Murr, and my brother. The three of us have trained together for more than 35 years. We discuss training constantly, and we experimented. But what really brought about this concept is in the early 1980s, I was running a lot of 10Ks and running a lot of marathons, and I was training 6 days a week and running. And as triathlons started to become popular in the United States, Scott and I started doing triathlons, and so we were devoting some of our training time to swimming, some to cycling. And what we found was as we got more into triathlons, we just could not run 6 days a week. There wasn't time with all the cycling and the running. While we were doing triathlons, we still saw ourselves, and our personal identity was more as a runner. And we did not want our 10K or our marathon time to suffer. What surprised us is that our 10K and marathon times got better as we were running fewer days and doing training, cross training. So that's where we developed the idea of running 3 days a week, cross training 2 or 3 days a week, combining them. And so you're getting all the cardio respiratory training through the cross training that benefits your running.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. We were just always wondering how this program actually,
Yes.
formatted. And thanks for the insight, because we have few triathletes in our group and they exactly know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And Bill, the second question that we have is specific to, you covered a lot of slides, the last few slides about how an individual can evolve during the COVID times, and how they can take care of themselves. I would, since you've seen a lot of running clubs as well in your past, we also wanted to know what advice do you have for a running club to evolve? Because in India, particularly, we have large running clubs which contribute a lot to the running trend in India, right? So we also, as a Hyderabad runner is one of them. We also like to know what you have, what recommendations you have for a running club, and what should we look forward for?
Well, I think the main thing is still through to stay in touch with each other and share what you're doing. And many runners in the United States are still able to get outside and run. And most of the lockdown, stay at home, do not prevent someone from getting out on the roads or neighborhoods. And I know that's much harder and much more difficult in India. So they are running and basically sharing their workouts, so that I may not be able to run with my friends and club members, but I can tell them, here's what I did today. And so whether it's indoors or outdoors, just having that support and sharing, and it's motivating. If you know that everyone expects to see what you did today and post it, whether it's doing a video, whether it was walking, whether it was running, etc., then you can share that. And I think that's as motivating, right? We've always said research shows that the greatest factor in the likelihood of someone exercising is if they have a partner or belong to a group. And so still providing that group and partner support remotely is valuable.
Right. Thanks, Bill. That answers. A little, going back to one of your slides, talking about the uptrend in the exercise, how exercise evolved. At the same time, you also mentioned about the paradox, which talks about seeing more obesity levels going up. It's definitely a paradox, but what is your take on that? Because exercise trend is one, but along with that, there is the food habit trends in a country, in a nation. It goes through a wave of fast foods and healthy foods and sugar and all those things. So I'm assuming these are related, and that's where the numbers talk. So what is your take on that? While exercise went up, the obesity levels also going up.
Well, I think it's very difficult, and I've written about this, that it's a little frustrating, and we bring runners from all over the world to our laboratory, and they come here at considerable expense in order to get faster. And what we find is that many of them are very disciplined. They're very dedicated. They'll get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and run in the dark. They'll run in cold weather. They'll run in hot weather. And as disciplined as they are, many of them are undermining their opportunity to run faster because they're carrying extra weight. And I think it says something about our society that we're surrounded by food. One of the things we talk about is portion distortion. Portion sizes are so much bigger now. And so rather than a 12-ounce drink, someone now gets a 32-ounce drink, soda. And rather than a 2-ounce muffin, they're getting a 5-ounce muffin. And so it's just available. We find in this country, if there's a meeting, people bring food. And whether it's mid-morning, mid-afternoon. So yes, people are exercising, but weight gain has a lot more to do with food consumption than it does physical activity.
Right. That answers, yeah.
So it's cultural. It's cultural.
Right. Bill, a different type of question, but like in the past, we also have seen a lot of movement towards barefoot running and also towards natural running form. And we have seen that it comes in waves and goes out, comes in, goes out. Well, currently we have a wave in India also about barefoot running. A lot of people follow. But how have you seen the barefoot running thing, evolving? And
yeah. I think that fad has faded in the U.S. I think that a lot of people found that they were developing calf problems, Achilles problems, and not to mention different problems of stepping on things, getting infections. And, the idea was basically that you should maybe be running more on your midfoot or forefoot. You trade one stress for another. People who are running more on their forefoot, more barefoot, are having calf and Achilles problems. People that are doing a lot of maybe heel striking are getting more knee problems. So you're just changing where the stress is along the kinetic chain.
Okay. Now just right the other way around. So off late, the most talked about things in the last year probably is about the 2-hour, sub 2-hour marathon, right? Everybody in the world was following that. But along with that, I'm not going to that question because many have read about it. But the other thing that's also evolving along with that is the over cushioning of shoes, right? The footwear cushioning. Like we're talking about massive cushioning, and we're talking about carbon plates to aid stuff. So while I just asked about barefoot running, I just want to talk about other end of, the cushioning part. What is your take on that? Is it here to stay, or do you think that's going to evolve further?
There are different opinions about that, and I've talked to the director of research out at Nike, and his take on it is the best shoe is one that is comfortable and that fits properly. That's the most important thing.
Right.
People have been touting certain shoes as being reducing your time for the last 40 years, saying this shoe will do it, and everyone rushes out to buy it. And so I don't think there's proof right now. You put a new shoe on a fast Kenyan and they run fast. Oh, who's surprised by that?
I agree. Yeah. Okay. There's one question from the audience, and India is a land of vegetarians, right?
Yes.
And while nutrition plays a big role in runners, do you have any recommendations on for runners or vegetarians, because protein rhymes with non-vegetarian
Yeah.
food usually. But what is your take on that?
Right. Oh, vegetarianism is just fine. Myself, I'm a pescatarian. I do eat some fish, but no, whether a vegetarian, you can get all your protein without any problems combining whole grains and beans. And so there really shouldn't be any problem doing so. Maybe for older people to make sure they're getting B12 vitamin, but other than that, it's the healthy way to go.
Right. Well, we have a question from Ramesh, and it's mainly about, because it's mainly about the strength workouts, right? How it aids the run less, run fast program, the strength workouts, how they aid that, that whole concept. How does that? Yeah.
Strength training?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's really important. And we find that runners come to our clinic, we spend more time trying to show them how to strengthen their core, strengthen their hips than anything else. Runners, I often say runners like to run, just run. And I find that when we give them the simplest strength exercises, they can't do it.
Right.
They can't step up on a box. They can't do a lunge. They can't stand on one foot. And you wonder just how can they run? And so that is the source of most runners' injuries, being weak.
Right. Stronger muscles aid, better heart rates and all those things. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think virtually all the strength training exercises that we have in our book can be done right in your home.
Right. That's the best part. Yeah. Right. Bill, I think I know that we have a few more questions, but we would take it later. Really thanks to you like I said, you really walked us back in time and brought us back here. And like with the timelines and data point, you made it really interesting. And thanks for answering few of the questions that came up. And I really appreciate your time for us.
Oh,
Thank you.
I thank you and the Hyderabad runners. It's been a sentimental journey for me.
Right. No, I would hand it over back to Niranjan for the vote of thanks, and thank you,
Okay.
Bill. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Raghu. And wow, what a fantastic learning experience we've had for the last 1 hour. Like all good things, one of our most exciting and interesting webinar comes to an end too. And before we call it a day, on behalf of our team at Hyderabad Runners, and also all our audience who've joined from various parts of the world, I would like to thank Bill for his invaluable time and the wonderful inputs that he has given us today. We have not only gone back in time to have a sneak peek into the history of exercising, but also understood the current trends from him, and even got understood how COVID would be affecting our exercise, our training, and how we can mitigate the situation. So please feel free. I'm sure some of you wanted to ask a few more questions, but as we have stipulated for ourselves 1 hour, we wanted to make this program interesting, crisp, informative, and stick to timelines. Hence, we start on time and finish on time. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask them by leaving the comments in the Facebook chat. We will try and reach out to Bill to take his responses, and we will reply back to you at the earliest. Also, please like our Hyderabad Runners Facebook page, the one on which you're watching this video now. and also subscribe to our Google groups, which are very informative. We keep giving you a lot of updates, information about our activities. So having said that, let me give you one more interesting update. We will be back with another interesting webinar on coming Saturday. That's 9th of May, with an equally interesting topic and another highly respected guest to speak to all of us. Do remember to join us. And until then, this is Niranjan from Hyderabad Runners signing off for today. So please stay home, stay safe, and stay healthy. Thank you. Bye-bye.